Right, let's take a look at the front pages for you. The Daily Telegraph features a photo of Boris Johnson with his foot on a table, or was it a footstool? We don't know. During a Brexit meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron yesterday, the paper says ministers have been ordered to turbocharge work on finding an alternative to the Northern Irish backstop.
Brexit victory salute, that's the headline in the Express, with a photo of the Prime Minister raising his fists above his head after returning to Downing Street last night. The Express says that Boris Johnson won over Emmanuel Macron.
And The Sun leads on the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge taking a £73 a head budget flight from Norwich to Aberdeen. The paper claims that Prince William gave Prince Harry a flying lesson, referencing the 4 private jet flights the Duke and Duchess of Sussex took in just 11 days.
Joining us now is the Observer's Sonia Sodha and Kate Andrews from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Is it a fist-bumping morning? I mean, is Boris Johnson right to be, jubilant when he comes,
I think it's all spin for the British press. So the real question is, has anything changed as a result of his meetings?
Yes, the pound had its best day for
Macron
months yesterday.
this week? Pardon?
Yes, it has. The pound had its best day for months yesterday.
Oh, did it? OK, well, that's interesting. But I don't think any of the realities have changed. I think we saw a series of very cordial meetings. That's what you'd expect. It's the first time these leaders are meeting each other.
Or at least not frosty, which it could have been.
Yeah.
That's the point, isn't it, that Macron was warmer?
He was definitely warmer than people were expecting, but none of the fundamentals have changed. I think both Merkel and Macron were crystal clear that unless the UK can put forward some concrete alternative proposals to the backstop, the withdrawal agreement is not getting reopened.
That's fair enough, isn't it? I mean, that's a
actually
reasonable position.
I think it's a reasonable position.
We'll listen.
Yeah.
Come up with some concrete proposals, and we'll talk. Now, I think actually that's progress. Don't you? What do you think?
I don't know. I think that it won't be as chummy getting closer and closer to the 31st of October, but it is good news for Boris Johnson in the beginning of his premiership that he was able to go so far somewhat unscathed and actually having nice moments with these other world leaders. I think what has changed is that Boris is starting to put more pressure on the European Union to be the ones that actually say no to this deal. He's made it very clear.
What deal? We haven't got one.
Well, there's...
Do you know what I mean? We're the ones saying no to their deal.
Look, realistically, in terms of the timeline now, the deal is going to be very similar if one does get over the line to what Theresa May brought forward with changes to that backstop. That's the crucial thing.
Well, scrapping of it, not changes to it, are completely getting rid of it.
We'll see. We'll see what the fudges are as we get closer to the 31st and where both sides start to compromise or don't. That's very possible. But the difference now is that Boris saying this is the exit date and the EU potentially having to say your changes aren't good enough, your proposals aren't good enough, might reframe it so that the EU starts looking like the ones who don't want the deal.
To both of you, I'm as cynical as the next guy, right? Been a reporter since I was 60, been around the block a few times, but I have learned over that period that politics is often about the politics of the personal. And I thought, looking particularly yesterday at Macron and Boris's feet up on the table, on the invitation apparently of Macron, he said, put your feet up, it's a little footstool, have a go. And when they said goodbye, I don't know if you saw the news footage when they were saying goodbye, but Macron could barely let go of Boris's hand. And you could definitely see a bonding relationship forming. And that's important at that level. Compared to what it used to be like very recently with the robot, with Theresa May, and the frigidity. I mean, looking at those scenes back then, it was like you were stepping into the deep freeze. It was awful. It was embarrassing. But at least, whatever you think of Boris now, at least you're getting a dialogue going and you're getting a kind of a relationship forming between, big leaders in difficult circumstances. That must count for something, mustn't it? The politics of the personal.
I don't think it's going to do any harm, but I just don't think any connection, any bond, as warm as it is going to get round the fundamentals of this impasse that the UK finds itself in with the EU. The EU feels that it made a really big compromise with the backstop, and Boris Johnson wants it taken out of there altogether. So it's just fine. They might strike up, a warm dialogue. Boris Johnson might put his foot on the table, and it all be very jokey and warm. That's not going to get round some of the fundamental negotiations.
Supposing Boris and his team come back, say in 2 weeks' time, within the 30 days that they were talking about in Germany. Supposing he comes back and says, "Okay, here's the plan," and he unfolds a technological solution to the border in Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. He comes up with the plan. They're not going to turn around, are they, and say, well, that's not going to work, technically.
They might.
I actually think
what if it does work?
I think Macron and Merkel have sort of laid down this challenge to Boris Johnson, but I don't think either of them actually think this technological solution exists. If it does, why hasn't it been put forward?
This is
Why
what
don't
we
we
were
know
asking
about
Melanie
Nick,
was
the
saying
minister
yesterday.
yesterday. Just like why? I mean, we've had the people who've been so against the Irish backstop for reasonable reasons. One might say, you know, nobody wants to see those people don't want to see Northern Ireland being treated differently to the rest of the Great Britain. Fine. But then come up with something else. And they've had so long to come up with it. It is remarkable to think that in 30 days they'll find something they didn't talk about for 3 years. Isn't it?
Oh, it is, but I think a lot of what's been talked about is more feasible than people let on, and not in terms of technological solutions that don't exist, but simply looking to other countries and looking where they do their border checks, and also recognizing that mutual recognition between standards might be a way through this for the EU and the UK.
And therefore, the point is, can that be achieved in 30 days? In order to be ready, or do we ask for an extension and we don't leave in order to get those technological solutions in place, which is the one thing Boris Johnson says he'll never do, which is never ask for an extension.
I think it takes
so he's backed himself into a corner, hasn't he?
I don't know. I think it takes the good political will to operate in good faith and to say, even if the solutions aren't in place by the time that we go through the transition period,
if there is a transition period.
If there is a transition period, assuming there's a deal, which we shouldn't assume, of course, there could be no deal, but to your sort of hypothetical, if a deal were to get over the line and they plan to bring in, you know, certain solutions, whether they be technological or where you're doing border checks or the rest, once you get to that date where the transition ends, if everything isn't perfect, you need to believe that there's goodwill on both sides to say, well, this doesn't mean we erect a hard border. This means that we have mutual recognition and we operate for a while, getting it to its perfect place.
But my question is actually more immediate, in that October the 31st is the date we leave no matter what, do or die. So if there is no technological solution in place by October the 31st, what happens on day one?
Completely depends on what the UK.
That's what I'm wondering.
To do.
Because surely these technological solutions should have been in place and being tested. Therefore, we know that when the day comes, it works.
I think if they existed already, we would know about them. They don't exist.
That's the worry.
But I think, you know, this whole 31st of October, do or die, there is still a chance that we don't leave on the 31st of October. I think it all comes down to what Parliament decides to do. And I think we've all been talking about these meetings in Berlin and Paris. Actually, there's an even more important set of meetings happening in Westminster next Tuesday.
If we don't leave on the 31st of October, Boris Johnson is finished. I mean, that couldn't be a redder line.
I think
there are a lot of
but you know, it might not be up to Boris Johnson.
Say about
Parliament
these meetings,
might exert itself. There may be a vote of no confidence. So Jeremy Corbyn is holding a series of meetings in his office next Tuesday. He's invited the leaders of opposition parties, Conservative rebels, independent MPs. Some have said no, we're not engaging. Some are going to meet with him, and there are a number of different plans.
Is Jo Swinson going to go? Because I think the key is getting the Lib Dems on side.
She said she can't back a temporary government of which he is head, which is one of the ideas on the table. But she's willing to talk to him about other ideas.
Is he? He's getting some support, but he's not getting nearly enough support to do what he wants to do. He's just not.
We're also talking about numbers that could so easily go one way or the other. He could win or lose a no confidence vote by one. So, well, it's quite fun to speculate in some ways. The reality is that you've got Labour MPs in Leave areas who know that if we don't deliver Brexit, they themselves are at risk in a general election.
If he loses a confidence vote, he doesn't have to step down straight away. He's got 2 weeks to form another administration, and then he can call a general election, by which time we've gone past October the 31st.
So much more could happen as well if it really looks like Parliament's going to shut this down and stop the UK from leaving yet again. He could call a general election before we get to the 31st and frame it as, you know, they're stopping me.
Would you put money on him not doing that? Because I wouldn't.
I'm not putting money on anything these days. It's 2019. Trump, Brexit, don't bet on anything.
Look, very quickly, let's quickly move on to the weekend. G7 at the weekend, and Boris is going to meet Donald. The two Trumps, as they're being called in America and this country, are going to meet. What do we think is going to happen? What's going to come out of that? Any statements about a trade deal?
I'm sure there will be warm words about a trade deal. I think, you know, Trump and Johnson definitely get on well. We know that. But I think it's going to be down to us, actually, to look beyond the warm words. We know, actually, that there have been little clues coming out from the Trump administration about what their approach might be to a trade deal with Britain. I think it's quite different to what President stands up on a podium and says. He's very, very much America first. We know that the US government would be looking to water down regulatory standards. We could
But why shouldn't he be America first any more than we shouldn't be Britain first? That's the nature of international dealings, isn't it? You put yourself first and then you do a deal.
Well, that is the nature of international trade, absolutely. And I think that raises questions about us leaving the EU. We're a much smaller economy than the US. We will have to go along with some of the things that the Trump administration dictates. And, you know, for people who wanted to leave the EU, this was all about taking back control. Well, we're leaving the EU where we did exert control. we were part of democratic structures there, to go into a trade deal with the US where the terms are going to be dictated by an American president whose politics lots of people in this country
accidentally said the NHS was on the table.
Well,
accidentally said that the NHS was up for grabs.
Trump said a lot of things accidentally and intentionally, which I disagree with. But look, I think, well, in principle, they are democratic structures. Actually, if you look at the way that the European Union operates versus how the UK will be able to actually say to the US, no deal's better than a bad deal, no deal's better than a bad deal, and pick, not table, and pick what trade deal on the table they want to pick up. The UK does not have to sign up.
Okay,
but
my
trade deal
interesting
with
thing
the
is how
USA,
they're going to shake hands. Will Trump do that thing where he pressed, I'm going to get on top here, you know, and will he elbow his way to the front of all the pictures?
I
just want to know what the optics are going to look.
Macron-Johnson handshake.
Which was about 10 seconds. They would not let go of each other's hands.
But just to pick you up on the point you made just in your last comment there, you said that if we do a deal with America, we will be doing a deal with an administration led by somebody that most people don't like, many people don't like, administration many people don't have respect for. But that's true of any international deal. You can talk of any country in the world that we do a deal with, there are going to be a proportion of people in this country who don't like that administration. But that's the nature of international trade deals.
But actually, the thing you try and do as a country is make a deal as part of a larger trading bloc like the EU. So when the US says to the EU, we only want to do a trade deal if you let us get chlorinated chicken in. The EU is a much bigger player. It can say no because their trade means more to the US than the UK's
but speaking
trade.
as a Remain voter, I'm sorry, but the majority of people in this country wanted to leave that trading bloc.
But if you care about trading blocs,
it was a small majority. Yes.
Oh, come on! It was a majority. That's all it takes in a democracy. The fact that it was a small one or a large one is irrelevant. It was a democracy.
But we have to challenge some of these arguments that were put forward that was, about taking back control. We are not taking back control if we go into a trade deal with the US. Trust me.
Well, no. That is completely unknown yet. It's completely unknown yet. If you want to talk about trade blocs, join TPP. We have decided to leave the European Union. Let's make the most of it.
All right. You're off on a flight somewhere soon, aren't you?
Going to Marbella.
You're going to Marbella?
I'm going to be the fanciest I've ever been on a plane.
Are you going to recline your seat when the light goes off?
I'm probably just going to fall asleep straight up, to be honest. It's an early start for both of us. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about that. Should you recline on short-haul flights, or should you keep the seat upright?